My name is Caitlin. I'm 29, and I never imagined I'd awaken completely bald on the eve of my sister's wedding. My hands shook as they felt my bare scalp, discovering empty spaces where my long blonde locks once cascaded. Strands of golden hair were strewn across my bedroom floor like fallen leaves. In the doorway, my mother stood holding scissors, wearing a triumphant expression. Emma's big day was approaching, and my own family had stabbed me in the back in the most devastating way possible. Before I share the rest of my tale, please let me know your location and consider following my transformation from casualty to champion against incredible family treachery. To comprehend why my parents would commit such a cruel act, you must understand our family's background. Raised in the suburbs of Chicago, I was always labeled the attractive one, while Emma earned the title of the brilliant one. These weren't roles we chose. Our parents branded us this way from childhood. The reality was different. I excelled academically, maintained perfect grades throughout university, and secured an excellent position in marketing. Yet in my parents' view, particularly my mother's, Emma's achievements consistently overshadowed mine. Our residence appeared flawless from the street, a 4-bedroom colonial home with pristine landscaping and white fencing. My father Scott worked in financial consulting, while my mother Diane operated a thriving interior design company. We shared nightly family meals and took yearly trips to Florida. The ideal American household, except the atmosphere inside was poisonous. Emma received another A on her science assignment. My mother would declare at dinner, then scrutinize me critically. "Caitlin, perhaps you should seek your sister's academic guidance instead of obsessing over your appearance." I recall winning a poetry competition in high school and rushing home with my award certificate. My father barely glanced up from his paper. "That's pleasant, dear. Did you know Emma was accepted into Yale's summer program?" This pattern persisted throughout our lives. When I graduated with academic honors, my mother remarked how fortunate I was that my looks had carried me through. Upon landing my first career position, my father suggested my employer probably hired me for aesthetic purposes. These cutting remarks became so routine that I learned to suppress my successes rather than celebrate them with family. Emma wasn't blameless in this dynamic either. During childhood, she'd have meltdowns whenever I received attention. As teenagers, she once ruined my prom gown the night before the dance because she overheard someone predict I'd be crowned prom queen. She apologized through tears afterward, and I forgave her because that's what siblings do. But the behavior continued into our adult years. When I received a promotion last year, Emma gave me the silent treatment for 2 weeks. When I purchased my first vehicle, a modest used Honda I'd saved for, she complained to our parents that I was being pretentious. It was exhausting constantly dimming my achievements to maintain family harmony. Everything deteriorated when Emma met Jackson, her future spouse. He came from established wealth, worked at a respected law firm, and met all my parents' criteria for an ideal match. From their first date, Emma became even more competitive with me. If I wore a dress to Sunday dinner, she'd comment about how I constantly sought attention. If I mentioned a work success, she'd immediately redirect conversation to her and Jackson's future plans. When they became engaged after merely 6 months together, my parents were overjoyed. Wedding preparations immediately became our family's sole focus. Every discussion, gathering, and holiday revolved around Emma's wedding. I attempted to be supportive, offering assistance with invitations and accompanying her to cake tastings, even utilizing my design abilities to create personalized thank you cards. Nothing satisfied her. "You're just doing this to upstage me," Emma accused when I presented the beautiful cards I'd crafted. "You know you're more talented at this creative stuff than I am." Despite the tension, I genuinely hoped to mend our relationship. When Emma asked me to be a bridesmaid, clearly pressured by extended family who had noticed my absence, I accepted optimistically, thinking this might be our fresh start. "Just don't try to stand out," she warned after asking me. "This is my special day." I had no idea how far my family would go to ensure I remained invisible at my sister's wedding. The 6-month countdown. The months leading to Emma's wedding were a masterclass in family toxicity. As a bridesmaid, I was expected to attend every pre-wedding celebration enthusiastically while simultaneously making myself as inconspicuous as possible. The engagement celebration established the pattern. I wore a plain black dress, subtle makeup, and styled my hair in a conservative updo. I remained in the background, helped serve beverages, and ensured Emma had everything she needed. Despite my efforts, I overheard my mother and Aunt Judith in the kitchen. "Caitlin is trying to behave, but you know how men always notice her," my mother sighed. "Emma deserves one day as the center of attention." "Maybe suggest Caitlin wear something less appealing for the wedding," Judith offered, "or have her do a reading so she's seated facing away from everyone." I pretended not to hear and continued arranging desserts, swallowing the pain. The bridal shower was worse. Emma's future mother-in-law, Catherine, a gracious woman who didn't participate in our family dynamics, complimented my handmade decorations. "You have such a natural talent for beauty, Caitlin," she said warmly. "These arrangements are gorgeous." Later, I discovered Emma sobbing in the restroom. "You just couldn't resist, could you?" she wept. "You had to make sure everyone noticed your special contributions to my bridal shower." "Emma, I was simply trying to make your day memorable," I replied, exhausted by the constant tension. "Well, stop trying so hard. Everyone's discussing your decorations instead of my gifts." This scenario repeated at every event. At the bachelorette party, Emma accused me of flirting with the bartender, who was simply being friendly to everyone. At dress fittings, she demanded I choose a bridesmaid dress a size too large, so I'd look unflattering. I complied, wanting peace more than dignity. The rehearsal dinner was the final straw. I wore a conservative navy dress, flat shoes, and minimal makeup. I sat quietly at the table's end and only spoke when addressed. But Emma's fiancé, Jackson's brother Mark, who was the best man seated beside me, kept engaging me in conversation. "You and Emma look nothing alike," he observed. "You're both beautiful, but in completely different ways." "Thank you," I replied quietly. "Emma's the real beauty of the family." "That's not what I see," he said kindly. "You have this natural radiance about you, and your hair is incredible. I've never seen that shade of blonde outside of magazines." I didn't realize my mother had overheard this exchange until I saw her whispering frantically to Emma, both glaring at me from across the table. Emma excused herself shortly after, and I found her having a complete breakdown in the restaurant bathroom. "You're destroying everything," she screamed, mascara streaming down her face. "Mark hasn't stopped staring at you all night. Jackson's entire family is probably wondering why he didn't choose you instead." "Emma, that's absurd." I tried to reason with her. "Mark was just being courteous. Everyone here is celebrating you and Jackson." "Then why did his mother ask if we were both models?" "She said we had identical cheekbones," Emma sobbed. "You always do this. You always steal my moment." I spent the next hour calming her down, reapplying her makeup, and assuring her she was the most beautiful bride-to-be in the world. By the time we returned to the table, I was emotionally exhausted but hopeful we'd overcome the crisis. That night, after returning to my parents' house where I was staying for the wedding weekend, I made a special effort to connect with Emma. I knocked on her childhood bedroom door with a peace offering of her favorite tea. "Can we talk?" I asked gently. Surprisingly, she let me in. We sat on her bed like we used to as teenagers, and for a brief moment, I saw vulnerability instead of jealousy in her eyes. "I'm nervous about tomorrow," she admitted. "What if I'm not good enough for Jackson?" "Emma, he adores you," I said sincerely. "Anyone can see that. You're going to be a beautiful bride and have an amazing life together." For a fleeting moment, we connected like real sisters. She even hugged me before I left for my room. "Thanks, Caitlin," she said. "I'm glad you'll be there tomorrow." I went to bed that night feeling optimistic. Perhaps the wedding would mark a new chapter in our relationship. Maybe once Emma was securely married, her insecurities about me would disappear. I fell asleep making mental promises to continue supporting her, to keep being the bigger person, to never give up on our sisterhood. I had no idea that while I dreamed of reconciliation, my parents were planning my humiliation. The feeling of something brushing against my face woke me. Still half asleep, I reached up to brush it away and felt something soft fall across my hand. I opened my eyes to see a long lock of blonde hair, my hair, lying on my pillow. Confused, I sat up quickly, and more hair fell from my shoulders. That's when I saw my mother standing at the foot of my bed, scissors in hand, a pile of golden hair at her feet. My hands flew to my head in horror, feeling the uneven patches where my long hair had been hacked away. Some areas were cut so close to the scalp I could feel skin. "Mom." My voice came out as a strangled whisper. "What did you do?" "What needed to be done?" she replied calmly, as if cutting off her sleeping daughter's hair was perfectly rational. "This is justice for Emma. She deserves to shine on her wedding day." I couldn't process what was happening. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the mirror on my dresser. The reflection staring back was unrecognizable. My hair, the long blonde waves I'd grown and cared for since childhood, was destroyed, chopped in jagged, uneven patches, with some areas nearly bald and others hanging in awkward clumps. "Why?" I gasped, tears streaming down my face. "Why would you do this to me?" My father appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with cold eyes. "Now maybe someone will finally pity you instead of envying you," he said flatly. "Emma deserves to be the center of attention tomorrow, not you." The betrayal was so profound, so unexpected, that I couldn't form words. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect me, and they had violated me while I slept, all to appease Emma's insecurities. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door, sliding down against it as sobs racked my body. In the harsh bathroom lighting, the damage looked even worse. My scalp was visible in several places where the scissors had cut too close. There were nicks where the skin had been cut. One side was dramatically shorter than the other. It wasn't just a bad haircut, it was deliberate mutilation. My hands shaking, I reached for my phone to call my friend Lauren, only to discover it missing. When I pounded on the bathroom door demanding my phone, my mother calmly informed me they had put it somewhere safe until after the wedding. "You're not calling anyone," she said through the door. "You're not going to ruin this for Emma with your drama." "Drama?" I screamed. "You cut off my hair while I was sleeping. It'll grow back," she dismissed. "Stop being so vain." I stayed locked in that bathroom for hours, alternating between sobbing and sitting in numb shock. Around noon, there was a soft knock at the door. "Caitlin." It was Emma. "Can I come in?" I unlocked the door, partly hoping my sister would be horrified by what our parents had done. Instead, after an initial gasp of shock, I watched as her expression shifted to something like satisfaction. "Oh my God," she said, her hand covering her mouth unconvincingly. "What happened to your hair?" "Ask Mom," I said bitterly. "She did this while I was sleeping." Emma's eyes darted away guiltily. "Well, that was extreme, but maybe it's for the best. You always get so much attention for your hair." In that moment, I knew she had known. Maybe not the exact plan, but she had known something would be done to ensure I didn't outshine her. "I'm not coming to your wedding," I stated flatly. "Find another bridesmaid." Emma's fake sympathy vanished instantly. "You absolutely are coming. If you don't, Mom and Dad will cut you off completely. No more help with your apartment rent. No more family connections for your job. Nothing. You'll be completely on your own." The threat was clear. Though I was financially independent, my parents had co-signed my apartment lease in the expensive city where I worked. They could make my life very difficult if they chose to. "You're my sister," I whispered. "How could you let them do this to me?" "It's just hair," she replied coldly. "Stop being so dramatic. The wedding is tomorrow, and you will be there looking exactly how Mom planned." End of discussion. When she left, I frantically searched for ways to salvage the disaster on my head, maybe a hat, a scarf. But when I emerged from the bathroom hours later, I discovered my mother had thought of that too. My suitcase had been emptied, all scarves, hats, and hair accessories mysteriously missing. "We've scheduled an emergency appointment with a wedding hairstylist tomorrow," my mother informed me over dinner, which I was forced to attend despite my red, swollen eyes. "She thinks she can even it out into a very short pixie cut." My father didn't even look at me during the meal. Emma alternated between vague concern when our relatives called to check on wedding preparations and smug little smiles thrown my way when no one was looking. That night, locked in my childhood bedroom, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, clear anger unlike anything I'd ever experienced. For years, I had made myself smaller to accommodate my sister's insecurities. I had accepted the role of family scapegoat, believing that eventually my patience and understanding would be rewarded with acceptance. But this violation had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As I fingered the jagged remains of my once beautiful hair, something hardened inside me. The dutiful, accommodating daughter died that night, replaced by someone who finally understood that some betrayals cannot and should not be forgiven. Morning arrived with pounding on my door at 6 a.m. Up and out, my mother's voice was cheerful, as if yesterday had never happened. "We've got a bride to prepare." The hairstylist, Marina, arrived at 7 a.m. and gasped when she saw me. "What happened?" she asked, genuine horror in her eyes. "Family haircut emergency," my mother replied smoothly before I could speak. "Caitlin had a little accident with some gum and tried to cut it out herself. Teenage-style impulsiveness, you know. We need you to work your magic." I sat silently as Marina did her best, watching more of my hair fall to the floor as she tried to create something symmetrical from the chaos. The end result was an extremely short pixie cut that left my ears and neck exposed. I looked completely different, vulnerable and exposed in a way that made me feel naked. "I'm so sorry," Marina whispered when my mother stepped out to check on Emma. "I did the best I could." "It's not your fault," I replied, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "But could you do me a favor? If anyone asks, please tell them the truth, that I didn't do this to myself." She nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the wrongness she sensed but couldn't fully understand. Getting into the bridesmaid dress was another humiliation. The size too large lavender monstrosity hung off my frame, making me look even more diminished with my new haircut. When the makeup artist tried to create a glamorous look to compensate, my mother intervened. No, much more natural for Caitlin," she insisted. "Just some light powder, and maybe a touch of lip balm." We didn't want to overdo it, but by the time we reached the church, I looked like a pale ghost drowning in fabric. The other bridesmaids gasped when they saw me, unable to hide their shock. "What happened to your hair?" Brianna, Emma's college roommate, asked, eyes wide. Before I could reply, Emma swooped in, glowing in her designer gown. "Poor Caitlin had a meltdown last night," she stage whispered loudly enough for everyone nearby. "She cut it herself. We think the stress finally caught up to her. Please don't bring it up. We're all just trying to be supportive." The look she shot me dared me to deny her, but with our parents hovering close, I stayed silent. The humiliation burned through me like acid. The ceremony blurred by. I moved mechanically, walking down the aisle, clutching my bouquet, standing with the other bridesmaids. But I felt every stare, heard every whisper. The church was full of people who had known me all my life, and none of them recognized the version of me standing there. But the real blow came during the photos. The photographer, someone from Jackson's family, kept subtly positioning me at the back or behind others. "Maybe Caitlin can sit for this one," he suggested, trying to sound diplomatic. "Actually," my mother added, "let's do a few without Caitlin, just for variety." So I stood off to the side, watching them take picture after picture without me. The ones I was in, I was barely visible. Emma beamed in every shot, glowing brighter with each one where her usually pretty sister wasn't beside her. At the reception, I overheard the versions of the lie my family was spreading. "Yes, poor thing had a bit of an episode," my mother told my great-aunt. "We're really concerned about her mental health. She always needs attention," my father told his business partner. "Couldn't handle not being in the spotlight for once." Even Emma, accepting congratulations from old friends, worked it into her smile. "Thanks so much. It's been a tough week with some family drama. My sister's going through something, but we're trying to support her." The only person who treated me like a human being was Mark, Jackson's brother and the best man. He quietly sat next to me at the isolated table they'd stuck me at, far from the wedding party. "You didn't do that to yourself, did you?" he asked softly. That simple question, finally someone acknowledging the truth, nearly broke me. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. "I didn't think so," he said gently. "For what it's worth, you still look beautiful. Different, but beautiful." His kindness hurt more than all the cruelty combined. I excused myself before the tears could spill and escaped to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The girl staring back was someone I didn't recognize, fragile, exposed, and diminished. But as I stood there, something shifted in my eyes. The fragile, broken version of me began to vanish, replaced by something stronger, something unbreakable. I walked back into the reception just as my father was in the middle of his toast. Standing quietly at the back, I listened as he showered Emma with praise. "Emma has always been our shining star," he said, raising his glass. "A daughter who makes us proud, not just with her intelligence, but with her determination and sound judgment." The crowd clapped and cheered. Then came the dig. "Some children," he said, shooting a pointed glance at me, "rely on attention-seeking behavior. Looks drama. But Emma? She has depth. Real value. Jackson, you've chosen not just beauty, but quality. Beauty fades, but true worth lasts." There were awkward chuckles from the crowd, most not grasping the sting behind his words. In that moment, watching my father openly honor Emma while subtly belittling me, I saw things with sharp clarity. My role in this family was carved in stone. I was the scapegoat, always made small so Emma could shine. My parents had created and protected this dynamic for years. No amount of empathy or forgiveness from me could change that. And as the truth settled over me, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt calm, clear. I owed them nothing. Not my presence. Not my forgiveness. And definitely not my continued silence or tolerance of their abuse. What they truly deserved were consequences, ones that couldn't be buried under smiles or polite lies. As Emma and Jackson stood laughing, cutting their cake surrounded by doting guests, something began to stir in me. A plan. They thought shaving my head had broken me, made me weak. They didn't realize they had created someone with nothing left to lose. Letting go of the need to protect this broken relationship felt freeing. For years, I had tiptoed around their cruelty, hoping that if I was kind enough, patient enough, they might finally see me, love me. That illusion was gone, cut away with my hair. Now, I observed the reception not with pain, but with clarity. I wasn't hurting. I was watching, strategizing. Emma and Jackson were spending their wedding night in the bridal suite at the Grand Palmer Hotel. Tomorrow, they'd fly off to Bali for their 2-week honeymoon. All their luggage and wedding gifts were under the care of the coordinator, Sarah, who also had a master key to every event-related room. While the dancing picked up, Mark found me again. "How are you holding up?" he asked, genuine concern shining in his eyes. "Actually, I could use some help," I admitted, deciding on the spot to trust him. "I need to run an errand, but I don't have my phone or car keys. My parents took them." His eyebrows shot up. "They took your phone? That's seriously controlling." "You have no idea," I replied. "Would you be willing to help me? I just need to pick up a few things." Thankfully, he didn't ask for details and nodded. "I can sneak out for about 30 minutes without anyone noticing." "That work." "Perfect," I said. While everyone was distracted by the father-daughter dance, Mark and I quietly slipped out to his car. He drove me to a 24-hour pharmacy, where I bought everything I needed, a small sewing kit, a few extra supplies, and a bottle of clear, colorless etching powder solution. On the drive back, he glanced over and asked, "Are you going to tell me what all this is for?" "It's probably better if I don't," I said honestly. "But I promise, no one's getting physically hurt." He nodded slowly. "Whatever happened with your hair, that wasn't some random accident, was it? You did that?" "No," I said flatly. "My mother cut it in my sleep, so I wouldn't outshine Emma on her wedding day." His grip on the wheel tightened. "That's messed up." "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said. If anything, it finally opened my eyes to things I should have seen years ago. Back at the venue, Mark helped me sneak in unnoticed. Before we parted, he slipped a business card into my hand. His personal number was scrawled on the back. "If you need anything, a friend, someone to talk to, call me," he said. "And Caitlin, whatever you're planning, make it count." His support gave me just enough confidence to move forward. Next, I needed to get into the bridal suite during the bouquet toss. Emma had intentionally left me out of it. So I approached Sarah, the wedding coordinator. "Emma asked me to add a few personal touches to the bridal suite," I said smoothly. "A surprise for Jackson." Sarah's eyes lit up. That's so thoughtful. Actually, I added, lowering my voice, she wants it to be a surprise for everyone. You know how Emma likes to make sure she's the one getting all the credit. Sarah gave me a knowing smile. Totally. Here's my master key. Just get it back to me in 20 minutes and I'll pretend I saw nothing. With the key in hand, I slipped into the bridal suite. I moved quickly and with precision. First, I found Emma's wedding night lingerie laid out neatly on the bed. I used the colorless etching powder to coat the delicate fabric, especially the most sensitive areas. Once dry, it would be invisible and odorless, only activating when it came into contact with body heat. Then, I opened their honeymoon luggage. I applied the same solution to select swimsuits, underwear, and a few shirts. Finally, I found their honeymoon folder with their first-class Bali tickets. I carefully took photos of the originals before replacing them with near-perfect fakes I would create later. I only adjusted their flight time, setting it 3 hours later than their original departure. In Emma's toiletry bag, I found her prized wedding makeup kit. I left most of it untouched, except for switching out her waterproof mascara with a non-waterproof version from the same brand. In Bali's humidity, it would guarantee smudged eyes in every honeymoon photo. While in the suite, I also took photos of the room setup and other key details I'd need later. I discreetly placed a tiny wireless camera in the corner, angled to capture the bed, not intimate enough to fully invade their privacy, just enough to witness the chaos once the itching powder kicked in. I returned the room key to Sarah exactly 19 minutes later. I thanked her for helping me with Emma's surprise, and she winked, completely unaware she'd just helped sabotage more than a gift. The next phase of my plan involved digital access. Luckily, Emma had always been careless with her passwords, usually some mix of her birthday or our childhood pet's name. During a quick bathroom break, I borrowed a bridesmaid's phone, checked the time, and logged into Emma's cloud using her predictable credentials. There, I found all the professional wedding photos already uploaded. I downloaded several key shots, especially the ones of her glowing in her gown. I also noted her social media logins and email access, which I'd need for Phase 3, set to launch after I left the venue. By the time the reception was winding down, everything was in place. I had laid the foundation for a revenge that would unravel slowly over the next few days, time to deliver maximum impact while keeping my fingerprints off it all. As Emma and Jackson departed for their wedding night, showered in rose petals and cheers, I stood quietly in the back, smiling. My mother caught sight of me, clearly suspicious of my oddly calm demeanor. "I hope you're not planning to cause a scene," she whispered as she walked past. "Wouldn't dream of it," I answered honestly. "I've accepted things exactly as they are." She looked unsettled by my calmness, but was quickly pulled back into the departure chaos. I didn't bother saying goodbye to Emma, my parents, or the relatives who had watched my public humiliation without lifting a finger. They didn't deserve a farewell. Instead, I left the venue in silence and took a taxi to the hotel I had booked earlier, using the bridesmaid's phone. There, in the privacy of my room, I completed the digital part of my revenge. First, I created fake plane tickets, identical to the real ones, but showing a later departure time. I emailed them to the hotel's business center to be printed and delivered to the bridal suite, along with a congratulatory note from the wedding party. Then, I accessed Emma's social media accounts and scheduled a few posts to go live during the honeymoon. Nothing overtly cruel, just a series of unflattering photos and awkward captions that would make her seem less polished to her carefully curated audience. I also drafted an anonymous email to her employer, subtly raising concerns about inconsistencies in her resume, attaching college documentation that revealed her true GPA and graduation date didn't match what she had claimed. It was just provocative enough to prompt an inquiry, but not overtly damaging to cost her the job outright. Eventually, I pieced together a short video compilation using audio my bridesmaid had recorded on a borrowed phone throughout the day. It featured clips of my parents and Emma talking about the haircut incident, openly admitting it was intentional and laughing at my embarrassment. I held onto this footage, keeping it as leverage depending on how the early stages of my revenge unfolded. As I wrapped up these preparations, a new sense of strength and independence began to rise within me. For the first time, I wasn't silently enduring their mistreatment. I was reclaiming control over my own story. The thought of Emma and Jackson's honeymoon unraveling due to itching, missed flights, public embarrassment, and potential career consequences didn't make me feel guilty. It felt like justice. They had violated me physically and emotionally, assuming I would quietly endure it like always. What they didn't realize was that by cutting my hair, they had severed the final threads of loyalty and compliance I had left. They thought they were ensuring Emma would be the star of the day by dimming my light. Instead, they had empowered me to become the architect of their own public undoing. And unlike them, I had made sure nothing could be directly linked back to me. There was no solid proof, only a chain of coincidences that would cast a long shadow over Emma's dream wedding and honeymoon. That night, in the anonymity of my hotel room, I drifted into the most peaceful sleep I'd had in years. Tomorrow, the consequences would begin for them, and freedom for me. The first sign that everything was working came at 2:37 a.m. when my burner email received an automated alert from the hidden camera I'd set up in the bridal suite. I watched, a wave of satisfaction washing over me, as Emma began scratching frantically, her wedding night turning into a nightmare of itching and discomfort. Jackson joined her shortly after, both of them inspecting the lingerie and bedsheets in bewilderment. "It burns," Emma cried, her flawless makeup now streaked with tears. "Something's wrong with these sheets." They contacted the hotel's night staff demanding fresh bedding and a new room. I could only imagine the scene, the spoiled bride in her irritating lace, the clueless groom, the exhausted hotel manager. By the time they were finally moved, their magical wedding night had completely fallen apart. I slept soundly. By morning, I was reading a flood of frantic messages in the bridesmaids group chat, still accessible through the phone I had borrowed. Their flight to Bali was booked for 10 a.m., but thanks to a little switch I'd made, they wouldn't find out something was wrong until they arrived at the airport. "Emergency," Emma messaged at 8:43 a.m. "Our tickets are wrong. Airport says 1 p.m., but the confirmation says 10. I'm losing it." The chaos only snowballed. When they eventually boarded their new flight, they learned their luggage had been sent ahead on the original one and was now sitting unattended in Bali. Then came the social media sabotage. The unflattering wedding photos I'd scheduled went live, ones showing her double chin, awkward expressions, all paired with captions that mimicked her voice just enough to pass as genuine, but were laughably arrogant. Feeling like literally the most beautiful bride in history today. Sorry to all other brides who could never. Friends began commenting in confusion, some messaging her privately, asking if she was okay or if her account had been hacked. By the time Emma caught on, those posts had been up for hours, already seen by hundreds. Meanwhile, back home, the fallout from the wedding was unfolding in ways I hadn't directly engineered, but had certainly hoped for. Marina, the hairstylist, had indeed told several people the truth about what happened to my hair, expressing her shock at my mother's actions. Word spread quickly through our social circles, and once I turned my regular phone back on, the messages started pouring in. "Is it true what they did to you?" My cousin Rachel texted. "That's seriously messed up. I always knew Diane favored Emma, but this is on another level," wrote my cousin Jason. Even my mom's oldest friend, Linda, reached out cautiously. "I've known your mother for 30 years, and I'm stunned. Are you okay, honey?" I responded selectively, neither confirming nor denying anything, which only deepened the mystery and stirred more speculation. The video compilation I had quietly put together stayed tucked away, ready as my nuclear option if needed. Meanwhile, 3 days into Emma and Jackson's honeymoon, the itching powder I'd applied to a few key clothing items was still doing its job. Emma's frantic messages to her bridesmaids mentioned mysterious rashes, late-night pharmacy runs, and ruined outings. Despite posting carefully curated Instagram updates, the photos revealed strained smiles and red, irritated skin, barely concealed with filters. A week into their trip, I got a surprise call from Mark. "I don't know what exactly you did," he said without any lead-in, but Jackson just called his parents, totally freaking out. Emma's melting down because her job contacted her about discrepancies in her resume. I smiled quietly. My anonymous tip had landed exactly where I wanted. "That sounds stressful," I said calmly. "Honeymoons can be unpredictable." There was a pause. "You're something else, Caitlin," Mark said finally, but his tone held admiration, not blame. "Listen, I'll be back in the city next week. Want to grab coffee? No wedding talk, I swear." The invitation caught me off guard, but in a good way. "I'd like that," I replied. Around day 10 of the honeymoon, my parents began calling constantly, leaving increasingly panicked voicemails. "Caitlin, we need to talk about these rumors going around," my father said sharply. "People are saying things that are really inappropriate about our family, sweetheart," he added. "We need to show a united front. Family loyalty is everything," came my mother's sugary-sounding plea. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on starting fresh. I'd moved out of my old apartment and into a new place, using the savings I'd been quietly building over the years. I took a week off work to breathe, reflect, and consider a job opportunity in a new city, far from my family's reach. But the most satisfying part? Seeing Emma and Jackson return from their honeymoon. They came back not as glowing, blissful newlyweds, but as irritated, drained people still battling stubborn rashes. Emma's perfect social media image had cracked under the posts I'd scheduled, and her job investigation was still hanging over her head. "This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life," she reportedly sobbed to her cousin Amanda, who, of course, made sure I heard all about it. Everything had gone sideways. The lingerie gave me a rash, we missed our original flight, and our luggage sat unattended at the Bali airport for hours, long enough for someone to steal my favorite shoes. Then, somehow, my Instagram started posting strange things I hadn't written. And now, my boss was questioning my qualifications. "That's a lot of bad luck," Amanda had said cautiously. "This isn't bad luck," Emma snapped. It felt orchestrated, like someone was deliberately sabotaging her entire life. But she had no solid proof. No way to trace it back to me. I'd made sure each part of my plan could be dismissed as simple misfortune. The rash? Could have been an allergic reaction. The missed flight? A booking mistake. Social media errors happen all the time. And if Emma had actually lied about her credentials, that was her problem, not mine. About a month after the wedding, I met my parents at a busy cafe, neutral territory where they couldn't cause a scene. They looked drained, visibly affected by the social fallout of their actions. "We need to talk," my dad began without wasting time. "These rumors about your hair, they're hurting our reputation." "Rumors?" I asked, feigning innocence. "That you cut off my hair while I was sleeping so I wouldn't outshine Emma on her wedding day? That's not gossip, Dad. That's exactly what happened." "It wasn't like that," my mom insisted, though her eyes darted away, guilt plain on her face. "We were trying to help," she added. "You've always relied too much on your looks. We thought." "Save it." I cut in, my tone calm, but final. "I'm not here for excuses. I came to tell you that I'm moving to Seattle for a new job. I won't be attending any more family events." "You can't just shut us out," my father blurted. "Watch me," I said, standing. "And just so you know, I have recordings of both of you laughing about what you did to my hair. If you try to contact me or lie about what happened, everyone will hear them." It was a calculated bluff. The recordings existed, but they weren't as incriminating as I implied. Still, the color drained from their faces. "You wouldn't," my mother whispered. "Try me," I replied coldly. "You created this version of me the night you violated my trust in my sleep. Now live with the outcome." As I walked out of that cafe, I felt something I'd never felt before: freedom. The people who had spent years tearing me down no longer had any hold over me. My revenge had done more than expose their actions. It had broken the toxic chains tying me to them. Later, Emma sent one text. "I know it was you. I can't prove it, but I know." I never replied. She didn't deserve a response. I chose instead to focus on my new life, a life where I could shine without being punished for it. Surprisingly, Mark became a part of that new chapter. What began as a simple coffee invitation led to dinner, and eventually to something much deeper. "I knew you were different the moment I saw how you handled everything at that wedding," he told me months later. "Most people would have broken. But you didn't, you got stronger." It was surreal, being valued for the very traits my family tried to crush. My hair had grown back into a chic, stylish bob that suited me far better than my long waves ever had. They tried to cut me down, and accidentally helped me grow into someone more confident, bold, and unwilling to shrink herself for anyone's comfort. 6 months after what I now call the wedding incident, my life had transformed. I was thriving in Seattle, succeeding at a job that recognized my talents. From my apartment overlooking Puget Sound, I drank coffee each morning watching ferries glide by, grateful for the calm that came with leaving chaos behind. Mark remained by my side, someone who didn't compete with me, manipulate me, or fear my light. When I earned a promotion just 4 months into the job, he brought champagne and made dinner to celebrate, genuinely happy for me. "You know what I admire most about you?" he said as we toasted. "You went through hell, but instead of becoming bitter, you built something better." His words helped me heal. Sure, my revenge had felt satisfying at the time, but the real victory wasn't in the havoc I caused on Emma's honeymoon or the embarrassment my parents suffered. It was in reclaiming my power, in saying no to people who only loved me when I made myself small. Some relatives reached out afterward, those who seemed genuinely concerned. I kept contact limited and on my terms. My cousin Rachel even visited, and over dinner, we had our first honest talk about the family's long-standing dysfunction. "I always thought your parents were unfair to you," she said. "But I never spoke up. I figured they were the adults. They must know better." "That's how abuse hides," I replied, using the words I'd learned in therapy. Everyone watched, but no one stepped in, assuming there had to be a reason they just didn't know. My parents and Emma made occasional attempts to reconnect, though never with real accountability. My mother sent a Christmas card and a gift certificate to a hair salon, her version of an apology that completely missed the point. My father left voicemails about family duties and moving forward, without ever acknowledging what they had done. Emma's text swung between blame, "You ruined my honeymoon," and fake reconciliation, "We should try to be sisters again." I didn't reply to any of them. My silence wasn't punishment, it was protection. Boundaries I needed for my own healing. And that healing wasn't simple or linear. I began working with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. We didn't just unpack the wedding sabotage. We dug into years of quiet, emotional erosion that came before it. I realized that much of my self-worth had been tied to how others saw me, especially my appearance, something my family both valued and resented. "They weaponized your beauty against you," my therapist once said. "They taught you it was your greatest strength and your greatest flaw." That truth shifted everything. I started redefining how I saw myself. I no longer viewed my looks as a liability or something to downplay. I enjoyed dressing up and styling my hair, not to please others, but because it brought me joy. I no longer feared being too much or felt guilty for simply existing as I was. One of the most powerful steps in my healing came from an unexpected place. I shared parts of my story in an online forum for people dealing with toxic families. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of people shared their own stories of betrayal, manipulation, and painful family dynamics. Their messages resonated deeply. Encouraged, I started a small support group in Seattle for people navigating similar struggles. Our monthly meetings became a safe space, where pain could be named, boundaries honored, and healing celebrated, without judgment. "You turned your pain into purpose," Mark said one night, after I described a particularly moving session. "That's the difference between revenge and real justice." His words stayed with me. While the revenge had been momentarily satisfying, the true change came from building something meaningful from the wreckage. The group members weren't out for payback. They wanted freedom, and they wanted to help others find it too. As the 1-year anniversary of the wedding approached, I received a long email from my mother. This time, it felt different, more sincere. "I've been seeing a counselor at church," she wrote. "She's helping me understand that what we did to you was wrong. I won't make excuses." At the time, I genuinely thought I was balancing some invisible scale by making you less beautiful on Emma's day. I see now how twisted that was. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I recognize the harm I caused." I read the message multiple times, bracing for manipulation or guilt, but it wasn't there. For once, there was no hidden agenda. So I let myself feel everything it brought up: vindication, lingering anger, cautious hope, and a deep, aching sadness for the relationship we could have had in a healthier family. After thinking it through, I responded with just one sentence. Thank you for recognizing the hurt. It was a beginning. I didn't offer forgiveness or attempt to rebuild the relationship, but I left a small opening for healing, if true change ever came. That was all I could honestly give. My father never reached that kind of understanding, and Emma still believed she was the victim of my envy, not the product of their cruelty. Some relationships can't be salvaged, and that realization no longer shattered me. Instead, I put my energy into the family I was choosing. Friends who uplifted me rather than competed. A partner who saw me completely and loved every part. And a community of survivors who truly understood what it meant to heal from trauma. 18 months after we met, Mark proposed on a rainy evening in Seattle, holding out his grandmother's ring. You've shown me what real courage looks like, he said, kneeling in front of me. I want to spend my life with someone who knows how to love deeply and live truthfully, even when it's hard. Through tears, I said yes, amazed that the darkest moments of my past had somehow led me to the most beautiful ones. When we started planning the wedding, there was no question. My biological family wouldn't be invited. Not out of revenge, but out of love, for the joy we were protecting and the future we were nurturing. Family is the people who treat you like family, I told Mark, as we finalized our small guest list filled with genuine supporters. That was a lesson I'd learned the hard way. The night before our ceremony, I stood in front of the mirror, running my fingers through my shoulder-length hair, now grown back into a style I loved. I hardly recognized the woman who once shrank herself to make others comfortable. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth wasn't defined by others' approval. Reflecting on the journey from that awful morning before Emma's wedding to this calm night before my own, I realized the true revenge wasn't in the disruption I caused, but in the peace I claimed. They had tried to strip away my power. They never saw they were setting me free. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that, in time, led to something better? If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your experience in the comments. And if you're navigating difficult family dynamics or learning to build a life rooted in truth and joy, please subscribe for more stories. Thank you for listening. Remember, sometimes our deepest wounds become the wellspring of our greatest strength. Like, share, and always keep this in mind. Family lifts you up. It never tears you down.